Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to another episode of the podcast, episode 34, where today we are going to quickly recap what happened, of course, in Bahrain almost a week ago, and then fully, and I think we're the first ones to give a full preview of the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix from Shanghai. And of course, next week's race is going to be race 1000 in Formula One history, so it's a big Grand Prix, and it's going to be a massive celebration, I think, of Formula One history and just what Formula One is about. So yep, that is what we're going to be doing today in the 34th episode of the podcast. Hopefully you guys are doing well no matter where you are in the world. Currently in the UK it's the middle of a okay Saturday afternoon weather-wise, but yeah, hopefully you guys no matter where you are in the world are doing okay. And by the way, I just want to say thank you guys for the support on the previous video, which is the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix incident analysis video. If you haven't seen it, it's in the description down below. The link is next to where it says the title of the video. But I just want to thank you guys for the support on that video, because the video is almost now on 12,000 views and has done very well, and that will now be a permanent feature after a race has finished, or after a race weekend has finished. So that will now be a permanent thing on the channel going forward. And thank you guys for the support, and also for sharing your opinion on plenty of things, no matter how strong your arguments may be. But yet today we're going to be looking at how the teams are going to perform in the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. But we're first going to recap the Bahrain Grand Prix, because, of course, Nib, who I'll bring on in a moment, was not a part of our race watch-along and has not yet given his thoughts as to what happened in the 2019 Bahrain Grand Prix, or, the key moments or the key talking points. So I'm going to bring him in now, and we're going to get his thoughts first on what happened in Bahrain. And Nib, how are you doing today, mate?
I'm doing very well. It's just gone past 1 o'clock here in Australia, but I'm doing very well. How are you doing yourself?
Doing very well, and nice and, I think, rested after what was a very chaotic weekend in Bahrain. But we'll start off with Bahrain. So the big talking points, of course, Mercedes getting the 1-2, a lucky 1-2, Ferrari having just massive disappointment in the second half of the Grand Prix, and us having an epic Grand Prix and a massive midfield battle. Let's first start at the top with Mercedes and Ferrari. What did you think of just how the Grand Prix, played out, or how the Grand Prix was ultimately won, luckily, by Lewis Hamilton?
Well, I think here I'll just go right from the start, from lap one, from the how Sebastian Vettel had a good start, got past Charles Leclerc, compromised Leclerc's run out of turn 2 and 3 a little bit, and that allowed Valtteri Bottas to go flying around the outside of Charles Leclerc, and he really was struggling on that first lap with tyre temperature. You could see he absolutely had no pace whatsoever, as we've got a picture on screen at the moment of Charles Leclerc around the outside of Sebastian Vettel. But yeah, it looked like Vettel was going to be, well, Vettel already after a lap had quite a comfortable lead. I think it was 1.5 seconds nearly, or something like that.
Yeah.
And then down into turn 1, Leclerc just put his nose down the inside. Looked like he was going to go for went for a move on Bottas. Bottas locked up, went wide, and that allowed Leclerc to move up into second quite comfortably. And then coming out of that, Bottas was immediately under pressure from Hamilton, and Hamilton quite comfortably, not quite comfortably at all, did a lovely switchback on Bottas out of turn 4 and got past. Hamilton just is seemingly an absolute master at overtaking or defending into turn 4, as we've seen later on in the race. But at this stage, just at the start of the second lap, Vettel had about 2.5 second lead over Leclerc, and very quickly that gap was being brought down by about half a second a lap by Charles, and he was absolutely rapid at the start of this Grand Prix. So much faster than his teammate and a lot faster than the Mercedes behind. And eventually he caught up. He asked the team, or told the team, I am faster. Ferrari, of course, responded and said, wait two lap. And then on the next lap down into turn one, just absolutely mugged Vettel off around the outside. I don't think Vettel stood much of a chance. Leclerc was gonna get past, quite comfortably, and indeed he did, and then he just flew away in the rest of the first stint, and all the pit stops were kind of triggered off by Verstappen, who had a puncture, a slow puncture, so everyone had to pit. Vettel lost out because they had to pit Leclerc to save him from the undercut from Hamilton. So Leclerc and Hamilton pitted on the same lap, and then Vettel the next lap after. Then what was it? Then Vettel on the medium tyre eventually got past Hamilton, who was struggling on the soft tyre because he had a spare set of soft tyres from qualifying that he didn't use. So that got him back up into P2, and everything was looking quite nice. And of course, Bottas did a little move around the outside of Verstappen, didn't he? Somewhere, I think that was just after the first round of pit stops.
Yeah, it was just after I think 2 laps after Bottas's stop. I think.
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, Bottas did get past Verstappen, whose race was hampered by some plastic bags, and we did see those plastic bags down into turn one. So unfortunate there that some plastic bags were on the track. Of course, it was very, very windy during the Grand Prix, and that sadly, just ruined his race. I don't think he would have had the pace anyway to actually challenge his teammate in the race, but yeah, poor display by Bottas. But then, of course, at the second pits, when the second stops happened, Vettel had a 5.5-second lead over Lewis Hamilton. When Lewis Hamilton come into the pits, Vettel responded immediately, coming in the next lap, and boom, Hamilton was there immediately. So Hamilton did an absolutely incredible job to catch up. I think it was about 3.5 to 4 seconds with the undercut on Sebastian Vettel, immediately put him under pressure. Vettel defended well on the first occasion into turn 4, but then as we've seen, the next time into turn 4, Hamilton broke extremely late, right around the outside, and on the exit of the corner when everything was already settled and done, he just lost the rear end, did Vettel, and once again, another spin by Sebastian Vettel. Once again, another mistake by the 4-time world champion. And it's quite simple. A 4-time world champion just cannot be making these sort of mistakes. It's ridiculous how many mistakes we've seen from Vettel now. And, Hamilton will come out and defend him. That's just because Hamilton can come out and say what he wants now. Because he's so much better than anyone else on the grid. There's a clear gap between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton is by far the better driver than Sebastian Vettel. It's clear to see. It's not even a debate. And I agree with what you've said through the week and after the race, that Sebastian Vettel, for me, is not an all-time great. And we've seen it so many times now. He cracks under pressure. We've seen it at Canada in 2011. We've seen it at Spa in 2010, or I think it was 2010. Yes, Spa 2010. So many times last year, a couple of times in 2017. He just cracks when the pressure is really, really on. And in wheel-to-wheel combat, he just isn't as good. His racecraft just isn't as good as Lewis Hamilton. And, as much, and a lot of people criticize Vettel and say, oh, the only reason why he's a 4-time world champion is because he had that Red Bull Adrian Newey car. Now, I'm going to make an argument here, but I'm not saying that just to make things clear. I think that one of the reasons why Vettel does make so many mistakes is because when he was winning so many times in that Red Bull, he didn't really have to overtake anyone. he wasn't in so many wheel to wheel battles. And if he was, it was with Webber a couple of times, and the couple of times that we did see them in wheel to wheel combat, they were very close to crashing. And of course, he just literally turned into Webber in 2010 at Turkey. Another absolute brain fade by Sebastian Vettel there. Um, you know, Hamilton, when he was at McLaren, he had to battle with cars to earn his victories. Whereas Sebastian Vettel has never won outside the top three. When he started outside of the top three, all of his wins have come from when he started inside the top three. Whereas Hamilton, I think, has won 4 or 5 races now, starting outside the top three. But Vettel, anytime he was starting in the top three, very often he was already in the lead by the end of the first lap, and then was just able to control it, get the gap to the DRS, and away he went. Whereas when Hamilton was starting in the top three, um, he had cars that were on a very similar pace level to his cars, and maybe even faster than his cars, so he had to battle them throughout the race. Whereas Vettel always had that clear 2-3 tenth quicker car than everyone else, at the very least, by the way, and was able to just fly away and win the race most of the time. So I think maybe not having as much battling with cars earlier on in his career is hurting Vettel here, but it certainly doesn't make any of his mistakes okay. And we thought that this long break, the winter break, would just be a good reset for him to get things back on track with his driving. And boom, we're in the second race of the season, and we're already seeing a mistake by Sebastian Vettel, and it's just not good enough. So I think they'll do it for Vettel at the moment. But and then of course his front wing failed after he had that. It was the rear left. It was a bit very heavily flat spotted and destroyed, and the vibration caused a front wing failure. And then that, of course, moved Hamilton up into second place. And then Charles Leclerc's engine. Oh, no. Oh, man. I was so devastated, because I do like Leclerc. He's a very likable guy, super quick driver. He's just young, refreshing, and exactly what we need in Formula One. I've been a massive fan of his since GP2. It was GP2 back then when he won, I think it was. He was extremely dominant. I think he won 7 races, and he could have won a lot more than that. So massive credit to Leclerc. He's always been a fantastic driver. But sadly, I think it was on about lap 47. He loses one of his cylinders. It goes down to, of course, 5 cylinders, because we are running the V6 turbo engines. And with Ferrari have come out and said that a short circuit in that area caused the drop of the cylinder, so that's not good. They said that they've never seen this sort of thing happen in all of the reliability tests that they've done on that part, and of course they would certainly have done so many of them. So very odd for that to happen, a little short circuit there in the system. And he was losing, I think it was about 5 to 7 seconds a lap, and about 40 kilometers an hour down the straight. But it wasn't only down the straight that he was losing all the time. It was out the corners as well, because he had no ERS battery power to actually go out of the corner. So that just cost him a whole load of time. And then eventually Lewis Hamilton, very luckily, as he has certainly been saying a lot of the time, and just flew past Leclerc on the straight. And then Bottas did eventually, but before Leclerc was probably going to drop down into P4, the safety car comes out, because both Renaults retired comedically at the same corner on the same lap. It was just an absolute joke. And just once again, no luck for Ricciardo, who of course did have some contact with Hülkenberg at turn 1 after locking up. So Ricciardo was a bit lucky there that Hülkenberg didn't get a puncture there, because Hülkenberg certainly did leave a lot of space. And then so Hamilton and Bottas with a 1-2, Mercedes 1-2, somehow, when Ferrari was so quick all weekend, it was 0.3 of a second that Leclerc got pole in qualifying, and somehow Mercedes once again capitalize when Ferrari muck up or Ferrari have issues, and they take the 1-2. And it's so funny, whenever you see Mercedes muck up, for whatever reasons, it's not Ferrari who are capitalizing on their mistakes. It's usually Red Bull. So hopefully for Ferrari, for their sake, that they are actually able to capitalize if Mercedes do have any blunders throughout the season. But it was certainly an exciting and thrilling Bahrain Grand Prix, capped off by Lewis Hamilton's extremely lucky victory after Charles Leclerc engine issues.
Yeah, it was a fantastic Grand Prix. One of the best races I've seen in the V6 Turbo era, no doubt about it. But yeah, with Vettel, I think I've said enough when it comes to Sebastian Vettel, but I'll say again, I don't think anybody out there can present me a strong enough case or strong enough evidence to suggest that he is an all-time great or even a great driver really at all. I don't think anyone out there can present me a strong enough evidence or a strong enough case for that. And I'll also say with Vettel, I don't think it's a case when it comes to wheel-to-wheel racing. I don't think it's a case of Sebastian isn't as good as Lewis Hamilton when it comes to wheel-to-wheel combat. I just don't think Sebastian in general is that good when it comes to wheel-to-wheel combat. I don't think he ever has really had that skill. And as you said with Lewis Hamilton, yeah, you can say, when he came into Formula 1, he was in the best car, one of the best cars on the grid. But he still had to fight every Grand Prix to get results and had plenty of battles with people like Massa, Raikkonen, Alonso, Kubica, Webber, Vettel. He had plenty of battles and had to really fight for it in his early career. And I think that's what set him up for a very dominant, say, second half of his career. But with Vettel, he doesn't have good enough practice, say, in wheel-to-wheel combat, because if you look at his early career or his career up until he left Red Bull, he didn't have that many proper wheel-to-wheel combats like Lewis Hamilton did, or didn't have any absolute standout overtakes like Lewis Hamilton, say, did at the time. So I think with Sebastian, it's just he was in a privileged position. I'm not going to, deny that he is obviously a good driver. I don't think he's a great driver, but he's a good driver. He did benefit from the Adrian Newey cars, even though I still think he did well in those cars, but we can't doubt he did benefit from those cars, just like Lewis Hamilton did in the Mercedes from 2014 to 2016. I just don't think Vettel has, in the early part of his career, I don't think Vettel has had the practice or the experience of constant wheel-to-wheel combat. And I think it's been basically proven two things. One, Vettel, when it comes to racing, is not that good. And the debate between Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel is over. There is no debate. And I'd even say that Lewis Hamilton, for me, is at least one level above Sebastian Vettel. He's quicker, he's a better racer, more consistent, mentally stronger. And I think all of those things, plus some other things, make him that better driver. But yeah, we'll move on from Bahrain. I think now we will go on to previewing the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. Now, the pictures I'm going to be showing, by the way, are from last year's 2018 Chinese Grand Prix. I just want to make that clear before anyone thinks, oh, why have you got pictures from last year on the screen? It's obviously from last year's race in Shanghai that was, especially in the final 20 laps, a fantastic Grand Prix. Hopefully for race 1000 we get another great race at Shanghai. But let's go team by team, I guess. So let's start with Mercedes. So Mercedes, for me, in Shanghai will be better than they were in Bahrain. I think Shanghai will suit their car, and normally does suit their car better than Bahrain does, because the corners are a lot faster and it does have elements of Albert Park to it. For example, the middle sector is very fast, especially in qualifying. So I think they will go better here in Shanghai. I don't think they'll have the best car, but I think they'll be a lot closer to Ferrari than they were at times in Bahrain. I still think Ferrari will have the best car, but I think definitely in the areas of the track where the aerodynamics or the chassis, you know, at high speed is important, I think they will be very, very good and very, very competitive, especially on race day. Of course, Lewis Hamilton is fantastic at this track. He won here in 2008. He won here in 2011, 2014, 2015, and 2017. So has plenty of success here. Valtteri Bottas also is pretty good at this track. Really should have won last year. So I think it's going to be a strong Grand Prix for this team. Nib, what do you think for Mercedes? Do you think they are going to be stronger than they were in Bahrain? I think personally, because of the way the track is and their history around this track, they really should be, shouldn't they, stronger than they were in Bahrain?
No, I don't think they will be any stronger than where they were in Bahrain. I still think we'll see another gap, the same gap as we've seen in Bahrain of about 3/10 or so. The Ferrari in a straight line is absolutely monstrous. We've seen that in Bahrain on multiple occasions and all throughout qualifying. Ferrari were half a second through the middle sector than the Mercedes were. So in that last sector with the huge back straight, I think Ferrari will gain a lot of time. And at China, there are a lot of fast corners in the middle sector, and that's where Ferrari are actually pretty decent compared to Mercedes. They're actually a little bit slower than Mercedes in the corners. But now that they've figured out what was wrong from Albert Park, I don't see them really falling back behind Mercedes or Mercedes being closer in that fact. So I think Mercedes will have a stronger... I do think Mercedes will be a little bit quicker in the race than what they are in qualifying. They always do tend to be, but I think we're all very shocked to see Ferrari, just to see how quick Ferrari were here in qualifying. Of course, I think Vettel was on pole by nearly half a second to the nearest Mercedes. So Ferrari were very quick around here last year, which we didn't expect. But I think he will want that Ferrari, sorry, will once again have a very good pace at China, but I don't think it will be too easy for Hamilton and Bottas in this upcoming race. I think Red Bull might be a little bit closer, but who knows? I don't see Mercedes being all that much closer to Ferrari.
That I have to say, I do disagree. I do agree with Ferrari in the final sector having the best car. There's no doubt about that. Ferrari will destroy the opposition in that final sector. But I think in the first two sectors, it's going to be kind of even. Because, I mean, Bahrain, the first sector in Bahrain is about power. And the last sector in Bahrain is about power. Then the middle sector is probably the most aerodynamic part of the track. In Shanghai, the first sector is lots of slow corners and then a short straight, and then obviously the middle sector is just corners coming at you left, right and centre. I think, again, the final sector Ferrari will pull enough of a gap to probably have the best car. But yeah, I just think Mercedes will have a closer car to Ferrari because of the first two sectors of the track, where I think the Mercedes car will be pretty good. But the final sector of the track is where they are really going to lose the time. I don't think they'll have the best car, but I do disagree. I do think they will be closer to Ferrari. Not massively closer, but I think they will be closer for sure. Definitely on race day. I don't think Ferrari have an easy weekend ahead, even if they do have the best car and they have that extra speed that we know they can carry on the back straight in Shanghai. We'll move on to Ferrari. Now, Ferrari, I think, will have the best car here because they're going to be at least even with Mercedes in the first two sectors, but then in the final sector, it's not even going to be a debate or a competition in that final sector. Ferrari will destroy everyone in the final sector because of the back straight. Then you got that short straight to the final corner and the straight, the pit straight going towards the line. That will get Ferrari most likely pole position, maybe a front row, we'll have to see. But I think, honestly, even if they do have the best car, and they really should, I know this might sound a bit, maybe I'm jumping the gun too much, but after two races, even though their car does look to be the best right now in Formula 1, if you look at the championship, they're already 40 points, or I think just under 40 points behind Mercedes in the Constructors. And both drivers are about a race win away points-wise from the top of the Drivers' Championship. So honestly, if Ferrari don't win this Grand Prix, I'm not going to say their season's over or their championship bid is over, but it's going to be a long, long season if they don't win this Grand Prix. Because, I mean, if you look at the tracks coming up after, you got Baku, which will suit Ferrari. Spain, Mercedes do tend to be pretty good there in qualifying because it is a very fast track. In the race, Ferrari tends to be better, but still. Monaco, Ferrari will probably be better than Mercedes, but Red Bull will trump them all, most likely. Canada, that is, I think, a Mercedes track. France, Mercedes track. Austria, Mercedes track. So if they don't win here, where they really should, given what the track is like and what their car is like and the characteristics of their car, if they don't win here, then their championship bid is really going to be flailing, honestly, because they're already falling quite a bit behind. And you don't want to fall that bit behind Mercedes when you know that that team tends to improve as the season goes on, and Ferrari tend to be the opposite. They tend to get worse as the season goes on. So I honestly think, Nib, if Ferrari don't win in Shanghai, even though they probably should, if they don't win, then their championship bid in the constructors and the drivers is going to be looking very, very tough. What do you think? Do you think Ferrari absolutely have to win this?
I believe so. I think this is a must-win for Ferrari. They're already under pressure in the Constructors and the Drivers' Championship, as you just mentioned. Well, I think both drivers are nearly about 20 points behind Hamilton and Bottas in the championship. So, they have to start to close that gap already, because you don't want Mercedes getting out to a gap. Because anytime that we've seen Mercedes get a good gap in any sort of championship over the last couple of years and throughout their dominance, they've been able to just extend that gap and maintain it. Ferrari have never been actually able to pull back a gap on Mercedes. So I do really think it is a must-win race for Ferrari. Otherwise, it certainly is going to look like a long, long season ahead. Even if it isn't a 1-2, get your other driver on the podium, because they just need to stem the flow and the good start that Mercedes have had to the season. Even though in Melbourne last year they weren't the quickest, they picked up the win. So I think that they have to win this race. I think they'll have the quickest car, as I said. But I think we need to calm down a little bit on saying these certain tracks are Mercedes tracks, because the characteristics in the cars have changed quite a bit from last season. Ferrari seem to struggle in the slow and medium speed corners, but are actually pretty good in the high speed corners this year, and that's usually where they lost out a lot of time to Mercedes in the past. So I think we just have to be a little bit cautious in already saying, all France, Austria, Mercedes track. Obviously in the past, yes, but it could all change because of the new characteristics of these cars and just how quick the Ferrari is in a straight line, but next weekend, Ferrari have to win. It's as simple as that.
As you said, even if they don't get a 1-2, just win the race. They got to win the race, because if they let Mercedes or even Red Bull take the win, I don't think Red Bull, by the way, we'll go on to Red Bull in a moment, I don't think Red Bull will take the win, honestly. But if they let Mercedes win again, then they will recover confidence-wise at some point, but I don't think it'll be immediately if they then throw away another win. So Ferrari have to win. Doesn't have to be a 1-2. I think in qualifying it has to be a 1-2 so that they can carry out a strategy and a plan to win the Grand Prix. But in the Grand Prix, with the result of the Grand Prix, it doesn't have to be a 1-2. As long as they win, I don't think anything else honestly matters, because from then on, going into Baku, for example, where I think Ferrari are going to definitely have the best car because of the final sector of that track for sure, then they can, you know, build upon that and start to close that gap. But if Mercedes win again, and God forbid they get another 1-2, then championship-wise, for Ferrari, things are not looking good. But yeah, hopefully for Ferrari, they can get the win that they should have got in Bahrain. By the way, guys, for you guys in the chat right now, and I can see you guys in the chat, we will come to you in just a moment. We'll talk about Red Bull, and then we'll go on to you guys and see what you guys have to say about the top 3 teams and how you think they're going to perform in Shanghai. So we're going to Red Bull. Of course, Red Bull last season won the Grand Prix brilliantly of Daniel Ricciardo in a very Daniel Ricciardo-esque race win. But let's be honest, Ricciardo won the Grand Prix, and Red Bull were going to win the Grand Prix. If Verstappen didn't make his errors, he would have won the Grand Prix, in my opinion. But they were going to win the Grand Prix based on the safety car coming out when it did, and that they could put on the soft tyres because they had, I think, a fresh or extra set of the soft tyres. They didn't have the pace to win the Grand Prix last year. They only had the pace because of how the safety car came out, and then brilliantly, and you know, credit to them for capitalising on that and taking full advantage. But pace-wise, they didn't deserve. Well, they didn't have the pace. I won't say they didn't deserve, but they didn't have the pace really to win the Grand Prix last year. And after their performance in Bahrain, I don't think Red Bull are going to win this Grand Prix. If you asked me a couple months ago, I probably would have said Red Bull would win this Grand Prix because I thought that the Red Bull car would look pretty good at this point of the season. But after Bahrain, I'm not so sure, because I think it's now starting to come out that Red Bull have some aerodynamic or chassis issues with their car. The Honda power unit, I think, honestly, is all fine. I don't think the issue is really the power unit. I think there are some issues. They're not massive, but there are some issues with the aero and the chassis, and that's why in Bahrain, at times, they just didn't have the speed that they really should have had. I thought in the race in Bahrain they were going to be right there with even Lewis Hamilton at times, with Max Verstappen speed-wise, but they weren't. And that's why in Shanghai, I'm not certain they're actually going to be able to go for the win. I think Red Bull can get on the podium, because this track does tend to be historically a good track for them. They had a podium here, of course, last year. Last year they won the Grand Prix. 2017 podium, 2016 podium, and then a couple of years before that they didn't get a podium. But the last 3 years they've had a podium, even though at times they didn't have the absolute best car, or a car that necessarily deserved pace-wise to be on the podium. So I think they're going to be right there to contend for a podium, no doubt about that, with Max Verstappen at least. But yeah, for the race win, I just don't see it. I don't think Red Bull quite have the car to win a Grand Prix right now. I think that's going to have to probably wait until Monaco, honestly. But you never know. Maybe if it rains, Max Verstappen can pull out his brilliance. we've seen wet races at Shanghai before, for example, 2006, 2007, 2009, 2017, 2010. So maybe if it rains, you never know. But honestly, and I think Nib, you'll probably agree, considering what happened in Bahrain, I just don't think Red Bull, do they quite have the car to go for the win right now?
Yeah, Red Bull, really struggling. Well, they're not really struggling, but struggling compared to where I thought they would be. With the Honda engine, the Honda engine is completely fine. It's very quick in a straight line. As I've said, and as we sort of gauged from the first couple of races and from qualifying, that the four engines are pretty equal. But it seems that only the Works Ferrari engine is extremely better than everyone else's. We've seen that in Bahrain, just how good it was. Um, but yep, Red Bull have come out and confirmed that they've had a little aero issue. It's not like a major issue with the aero, but just in the details. So there are some parts of the aero that are just not working for them at the moment. That will just be that certain vortices aren't going in certain places that they expected and want, and that's just not giving them as much downforce as possible. Or that could be a little issue with the front wing design, that it's not just getting the vortices and cleaning up that air, sending it towards the back of the car. So yeah, that could be the issue there with the Red Bull. But they seemed pretty good in Australia. Um, but it's been set up by Helmut Marko that they have a narrow setup window, and that they're really struggling after with parts after Pierre Gasly's crash in Barcelona. Um, he said that, but Gasly crashed twice in Barcelona, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I was
Yes.
actually it's annoying with the second crash he had because I'd only just moved on from that corner where he crashed, moved down the track. But yeah, the second one was the one that was the really bad one. The first one wasn't that bad. I think he only broke the suspension in the front wing, but the second one he basically ripped the back end of the car off, and it was a very very bad crash, I think, for the team. And yeah, that's probably contributing to their, say, lack of development or parts. I'm not sure, but yeah, it was the second crash. I think was the one that really cost the team at the time.
Yeah, indeed. And Marco said that this whole issue is because of Gasly's crashes and them having and losing parts, so that they couldn't test out new parts those parts that they're running on the car in the last few days. So Helmut Marko immediately putting the blame on on um on Pierre Gasly, and he has certainly not had a good start as Pierre Gasly at Red Bull. Um, very slow all weekend. Um, at Bahrain, got unlucky in Australia, but then throughout the race just wasn't able to get the moves done. So if you're Pierre Gasly, you'll be hoping that you have a much better Chinese Grand Prix, and I do think he will have a better Chinese Grand Prix if Red Bull can set up that car in the right window, and if it is a little bit warmer in China, because of course at night time in Bahrain it's reasonably cold. Track temperature is only about 25 degrees, and when it was about 40 degrees um, in the Australian Grand Prix and over that whole weekend, they seem to be performing better. So Red Bull will be hoping for some warmer weather conditions, but who knows? We might not exactly get that in China. I remember last year everyone was complaining and they're all saying it's like back at pre-season testing. It was absolutely freezing over the weekend, except for the race. The race was actually quite warm, but that weekend was quite cool. So Red Bull will be hoping we'll be hoping for some warmer conditions, perhaps, to make sure that they can fire up those tires properly.
Yeah, because they did have an issue with the soft compound. They just couldn't get the soft compound working. And by the way, for the Chinese Grand Prix, we are going to have softer tyres. Because at the Bahrain Grand Prix, we had, I think it was C3, C2, and C1 that we had in Bahrain. For Shanghai, I'm pretty sure we have C4, C3, and C2. I think it's a step softer. I think it is. Don't quote me on that, but I think that is, yeah, make sure to, because I think that is the case, but that could help them, because of course in Australia, the compounds were softer than they were in Bahrain for obvious reasons, because tyre wear is more of an issue at Bahrain than it is in Australia. Yeah, for Gasly, all he needs to do is, and I said this, I think the race watch along and the reaction after the Grand Prix, qualify in the top 6, finish in the top 6. If he does that at least, then that's a good, say, recovery or beginning of a recovery after the first 2 races that have been absolutely terrible. And by the way, he did not deserve to get the points in Bahrain. He only got the points because of Sainz being hit into and then the 2 Renaults retiring. So Gasly really has been poor this season. But now we are going to go, before we go to the midfield and preview how they are going to do, and it is going to be a mighty close midfield after what was a very, very close midfield in Bahrain. We're now going to go to the live chat and the comment section and see what you guys have to say. So make sure on the live chat right now to post your thoughts about how you think these top 3 teams are going to do in Shanghai. And I'll read out as many as I can, probably for the next 10 minutes or so. And then we'll move on to the midfield. There's so much to talk about when it comes to the midfield. So yeah, post down the live chat right now. But guys,
and
go ahead.
Just quickly, yeah. So the tyres for China are going to be the C2, the C3, and C4. So softer compound tyres for China than what they were at Bahrain.
Good, and hopefully it's hot in Shanghai, because then we will get I think we'll get a better race if it's hot with that type of compound of tyre, because as we know, those, especially the long fast corners in Shanghai, it really can tear the tyres apart. So yeah, gonna be, I think, good to see those tyres at that Grand Prix. But yeah, guys, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. We do the podcast every Saturday where there's not an F1 race weekend, and also don't forget to subscribe for the Chinese Grand Prix content coming up next weekend. And by the way, make sure to stick around until the end of this podcast, as I will be offering an update, because I am making a small but maybe important change to my schedule on a race weekend. Kind of just trying to test out something for this certain thing going forward. So make sure to stick around to the end. But yeah, don't forget to subscribe. Bottom right of the screen, you can click subscribe right there, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. But for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll go through the comments and read out the best ones I can find. Then we'll go on to the midfield. So, let's now take a look at what you guys are saying. And it says, yeah, I don't see Red Bull in the hunt right now, really, and they will probably have to wait a long while. I don't think it'll be like that. I don't think they'll have to wait a long time. I think once we get to Spain and Monaco, I think you'll see an improvement for sure, because I think Red Bull already are talking about the upgrades that are going to be coming to the Spanish Grand Prix. So, yeah. So I think they know what issues they have, and I think they're already putting things in place to solve to solve the issues they do have. And I think once we get to Monaco, if they then produce the performance that we think they're going to, I think everyone will forget that they didn't really have the speed necessarily in the first 4 races. Mr. Random Guy says, it would be fantastic to have a wet-dry race for the 1000th Grand Prix. It would. Absolutely would. Crystal Racing says, Mercedes still have a decent car, but definitely not a dominant car. Ferrari's aero department have caught up massively. Absolutely agreed. This is the thing. Mercedes, of course, won the drivers and constructors in 2017 and 2018, but they did not dominate those seasons at all. I know they're still continuing the domination from the 2014 to 2016 era, but they have not dominated the last two seasons we've seen. They absolutely have not. And they're not going to dominate this season, even though, well, even if they do take both titles again. They're not going to dominate it at all. Let me find some more comments here. Danny Lawther says, Vettel was amazing when he's confident and running up the front all alone, but Alonso, Button, Hamilton all say, I don't think they have said that, but maybe they've questioned it. He says, all say he's useless in wheel-to-wheel combat. He overthinks it, as they all do it naturally. I don't think he is useless. We have seen good overtakes from Sebastian in the past, but he just doesn't have that skill that a Lewis Hamilton or even a Michael Schumacher had in wheel-to-wheel combat. Michael was very aggressive, very tough, and sometimes over the line with what he did. But when he overtook you, he would put a great move on you. And also, when he defended his position, you had to put an amazing move on him to get past. And that is the hallmark of a great driver, where it is incredibly hard to beat that great driver. But with Sebastian, it doesn't seem for people like Hamilton, Bottas, Leclerc, Verstappen to be that hard, or as hard as maybe they would have thought to beat Sebastian Vettel. Simon Cragland asks, do you think Leclerc will beat Vettel after what we saw, or after you saw in Bahrain? Leclerc convinced me in Bahrain. I think he will win the battle against Vettel this year. I did actually predict before the season started that I think Leclerc will beat Sebastian Vettel this season. I think Leclerc will finish in second in the Drivers' Championship and Vettel will finish third. That's my prediction for this year. And I have to say, Nib, like, I know you predicted Vettel to win the championship, but this is the reason. I'm not gonna rag on you for, you know, predicting it because it's your opinion, but this is why I couldn't predict Vettel to win the championship, even if Ferrari had the best car, because I don't trust the guy to get the job done. I trust Lewis Hamilton, even in a second best car that is not too far away. But with Vettel, I just don't trust him. If he performed like Lewis Hamilton did, or performed like a four-time world champion, then I think Vettel would be my favourite to win the championship this year. But I just can't trust the guy to do it. So that's why I didn't predict him to come out on top. And the final comment I'll read out is an interesting question, but I don't think I can agree. Ultraman in the chat asks, is Bottas overrated? I think he's underrated, to be honest. I don't think he's overrated. I don't think anyone rates him really highly. Yeah, I don't think he's overrated. I think, if anything, he's underrated. And I think the criticism he got at the end of last season was quite unfair. I know his performances at the end of last season weren't good, but people were acting like his 2018 had been terrible when it had been a lot better than people actually thought. So I think he's more so underrated than overrated. But I think now we'll move on to the midfield and start off with Renault. Now, in Bahrain, they were heading for a good race result, P6 and P10, and then of course everything went wrong at the end. But as Cyril Abitbol came out and said, this season has been, or it's been a poor start to 2019 for Renault. And one thing I'm looking forward to seeing at this Grand Prix, and I think this Grand Prix will show what issues they do have. If it is aerodynamical chassis, then it will show up at this track, because this is probably aerodynamically the most aerodynamically efficient track we go to before we get to Catalonia. So if they do struggle in the first two sectors compared to the other midfield teams, then I think we know what the issues are. But if they're maybe not that and it is still the power unit, then, you know, we'll know if it is the power unit. But for Renault, I'm going to be honest, even if they can have a decent result here, my honest opinion for Renault is they probably already know what the issues are with this car. What I would do if I was Renault is not give up on the next two races, but they definitely know what is wrong with the car. What they should do is focus right now the resources and money that they do have on a big upgrade for the Spanish Grand Prix, because I don't think, even if they did bring a small upgrade, I don't think they're going to get a satisfactory result from Shanghai or Baku. So honestly, for this team, you could argue that these two next races are throwaway races, but I just think when it comes to improving the car, they should really focus on the Spanish Grand Prix, because again, I don't think the next two race results are going to be good enough to really boost the team. I think they can definitely in Shanghai get points, and I think they will. I don't know which car, and I don't know where they will finish in the points, but I think they will. But again, I don't think in this race coming up or the next race in Baku, they will get a result that is satisfactory enough for them to think, well, we've, you know, improved the car or we're doing well. For me, they've really got to focus on a big upgrade for the Spanish Grand Prix, because if they can then, with that big upgrade, step up a level, then they can then properly start what we thought their 2019 was going to be. But right now, even though their race pace was good, they just haven't, results-wise, they just haven't produced, you know, the qualifying results or race results to really, for me to really say that it's been a good start to the season. Yes, in Australia they had good race pace. Yes, in Bahrain they had good race pace, but it didn't translate into any results because of reliability and also lack of grip at times. So I honestly think these next two races, even if they can finish in the points, I don't think the points finish is going to be that great or really improve the team's hopes going forward. Nib, for Renault, do you agree? Do you think they should really focus on a big upgrade for the Spanish Grand Prix? Because honestly, I think if they did that, they could then maybe not start again, but really get their 2019 going in the way I thought it would.
Well, I'm sure that if there is going to be upgrades coming for Barcelona, that they will well and truly already be in the pipeline. And those probably would have been in the pipeline already after the first preseason test. So I think Renault, what Renault have come out and said is that they're having issues with their engine performance in qualifying. They're having lots of electronic issues with the engines in qualifying. It happened to Hulkenberg and even to Ricciardo in qualifying, and that's why they're really struggling. We're seeing that the Renault engine is very good this season, and Renault are just struggling with a few little issues with it at the moment. Interestingly, because McLaren certainly aren't struggling with any issues in terms of pace with the engine or any terms of electronic issues with its performance. So Renault need to sort that out a bit. Cyril Abiteboul has come out and said that they are going to be looked into and will try and be sorted for China. So if they can get that sorted out and start to qualify and get into Q3, I think that will help already, because we've seen already that the Renault is very good in the race. They probably would have been got those positions of best of the rest. If Ricciardo was on the right strategy, the two-stop, because of course he was ahead of Hulkenberg before the pits, before the first rounds of pit stops and everything. And then, of course, B, if their cars didn't blow up at the same corner, on the same lap. So Renault, I think that they have good race pace, but I think mainly they just need to sort out their issues in qualifying.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to, because it's all great having great race pace, but if you don't qualify in a high enough position in the fight you are in, then you're always giving yourself a hard job every time in the Grand Prix to then go and get the result that you want to. McLaren had kind of a similar thing last year. They would qualify 12th, 13th on the grid, have great race pace like they did last year in Shanghai, where Alonso finished in P7 and I think Van Dorn might have finished in the points, I don't know. Probably finished 10th or 11th. But it's kind of the same thing for Renault at the moment. They're qualifying too low down to really show that good race pace. And their race pace, even compared to Red Bull, was pretty good. But again, because in qualifying they were just so poor, and those issues, those electronic issues with the power unit affected them, they couldn't show it as much as they probably should have. If they could qualify more so towards the front of the midfield and have that speed, then you never know, they could have maybe been not that far away from Verstappen at times. But they've got to sort out qualifying, because if you qualify too low down, even if your race pace is good, you're giving yourself a very hard job every time to then go and get a good result. But talking of good results, let's now go on to McLaren, who of course in Bahrain had a great result, and I think probably had one of the best cars in the midfield. You could argue the best car in the midfield. Norris finishing in P6 in Bahrain. Sainz, I think, would have been in that type of position if he didn't have the contact with Max Verstappen. McLaren are looking good, and I think it will get even better in Shanghai, because historically this track does tend to be good for McLaren, even in the last few years where they haven't had the best kind of car. I mean, look at last year where they had a terrible car and they did actually have very good race pace and got a points finish. So I think McLaren will be good in Shanghai. I think they'll be in a similar-ish position pace-wise. Whether they'll be able to translate that into a good enough qualifying and race position, I don't know. I'm going to be a bit cautious when it comes to that. But in terms of speed compared to other teams, they should be about 5th or 6th fastest for me in Shanghai. Because again, I think Shanghai will suit the McLaren car. Because aerodynamically, the McLaren car is looking pretty good right now. So hopefully that will continue. Nib, do you think McLaren can continue what they did in Bahrain and continue this good start to 2019?
I do think they are. I do think. I think they will improve and continue to show what they showed in Bahrain. I think they'll have another good weekend in China. You know, I think I think it was Lando Norris who said in a little post-race interview on Sky that it's really in the straights where they're performing very well compared to the rest of the midfield teams, and they're actually not too great in the corners. So I think, well, with that big long straight that they have at China, I think that McLaren will be very strong once again. And I didn't talk about him when I recapped the Bahrain Grand Prix, but Lando Norris in Bahrain was superb. What a drive by Lando Norris it was. I think most people didn't even realize that he dropped down to about 15th or 14th after the first lap, because he went wide and off the track through the fast right and then left in the second sector. He actually went off there and went down to about 15th, overtook a heap of cars, including Pierre Gasly around the outside of turn 4. I mean, that was just a ridiculous move. Boy, oh boy, he absolutely mugged Pierre Gasly off around the outside. I don't know how on earth he did it. It just looked like it was a video game. It looked like Pierre Gasly was like set on 75 AI, and you know, it was like let's say me, because I'm a little bit quicker than 75% AI. It was me just absolutely storming around the outside of that car. So incredible move by Lando Norris there, and then just continued to overtake cars. Then got himself up into up behind Nico Hulkenberg. Of course, Hulkenberg was quicker than Norris throughout that race, and that's why he would have finished up ahead of him. But then defended superbly against Kimi Raikkonen for about 10 or 15 laps in the closing laps of the Grand Prix. We didn't actually see much of the battling because Leclerc was having his engine issues, and Vettel and Hamilton were battling throughout those stages. So that's why we didn't see much of that battle. But he was superb during the Bahrain Grand Prix. So massive shout out there to Lando Norris, another fantastic start to his Formula One career. Obviously, had a very good start with qualifying in Melbourne, but in the race he got held up in the Giovinazzi train and couldn't capitalise on that good qualifying performance. But I do think they will be pretty good in China. I think they will be one of the better teams in the midfield, like we've seen so far this season, and I think they're going to just continue what has been a surprisingly a good start for McLaren.
Yeah, I think they will. And also, when you said that Norris said that they're gaining on the straights, I think one thing that we do have to remember with all the teams, one thing will become clear, I think, after this weekend, as to the strengths and the weaknesses of basically all the teams. Because Australia, high-speed track, Bahrain, even though it does have straights, the corners are slow, and then Shanghai, it's kind of a mix between the two. So I think after this Grand Prix, we will know with every team where they're strong and where they're weak. So I'm looking forward to seeing for all the teams, especially in the midfield, where they're not doing so well and where they are doing well. Because the McLaren car, I mean, you can't tell unless they're fighting in a battle and get slipstream and stuff like that. You can't really tell visually on their own whether a car is really quick in a straight line unless there's a massive difference. The McLaren car to me does aerodynamically though look pretty good. It looks nice and settled, not amazing, but it does look a lot better, I think, than it did definitely at the end of last year or in the second half of 2018. So I think McLaren all around at the moment are looking definitely improved. Next up is Alfa Romeo. Now, Bahrain was great. Kimi Raikkonen finishing P7. I'm going to be honest, I think Kimi and his performance in Bahrain was very underrated. I think people weren't giving enough praise to Kimi Raikkonen for his performance because you have to remember, during the Grand Prix, he was involved in so many chaotic battles with the Renaults, Magnussen, Perez, the Toro Rossos, McLarens, involved in so many chaotic battles, but at the end of the day, came out with a P7, and that has now pushed Alfa Romeo into P4 in the Constructors, and I think his performance in Bahrain was very, very good. And going into Shanghai, things for that team are looking pretty good. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't think this track is going to suit the Alfa Romeo car, really, because it doesn't, if you look at the Alfa Romeo car, it doesn't look like a car that would really be suited to this kind of track. You need predominantly in the corners to have a car that is very aggressive, say on turn-in, and active, say like the Mercedes car is. The Alfa Romeo just isn't, you know, that aerodynamically good in that way. It's a lot better in the slower corners, in my opinion. And I think Shanghai, I think Alfa will, I don't think they'll struggle, but I don't think they'll be as quick as they were in Bahrain. I don't think they're going to be super fast. But I will say, if they can get a points finish, then it would be a great result for the team. And if Kimi could get a similar result to Bahrain, then Alfa definitely, out of all the midfield teams, are having the best start, I think, to 2019. But we'll have to see, of course. But yeah, in Shanghai, I think Alpha are going to, pace-wise, I think they are going to fall back, but not massively. Nib, for Alpha, where do you think they're going to end up in the Chinese Grand Prix? Can they get a points finish? Do you think they'll drop back?
With Alfa Romeo, I think even if their car is quite poor throughout the weekend, I still think Kimi Raikkonen will score points with the car. Kimi really showing that he still really does have it. Even though I think most of us knew that Kimi still really did have it. Maybe there was some little questions that Kimi had just fallen off it a little bit, but he certainly showed that he is still there at nearly 40 years of age now. Crikey, he's getting old now, the Kimster. That overtake that he did on both of the Toro Rossos.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, fantastic. The little switchback coming out of turn 8 or 9, and then down the inside into turn 10. Wow, that was really fantastic stuff by the Kimstar. Couldn't quite get past Lando Norris. I think he might have done so if there wasn't the safety car to the checkered flag. But a very strong weekend for Alpha and for Kimi. But Giovinazzi, he just needs to keep his nose clean, have a clean weekend, get no damage anywhere, and just needs to start building some momentum to get himself into the season. Because in Melbourne, he had some contact on. I think he ran over Ricciardo's front wing actually at turn 1, and actually walked around Albert Park during the week, and there is tyre marks from where Daniel Ricciardo locked up for about 100 meters. It's quite funny to see how long his lock up was. But Giovinazzi got unfortunate with that, and then in Bahrain, of course, he had that contact with Danny Kvyat at turn 11, which was a weird incident. It's like he was very half-assed about it. He didn't really go for the move. He just kind of put his car there, and then there was eventually some contact. I did think it was a racing incident though. I think Kvyat didn't give him the most amount of space, but I also think Giovinazzi probably shouldn't have really went for the move. Or if he did go for the move, go for it harder, because it was very he didn't really go for it, shall I say. But I think even though Alpha might struggle this weekend, they've still got a car that is quick in the straights. And that is very important around here with that big, long straight, well over 1 kilometre long. And I do think that no matter how their car is actually performing, that Kimi will get points.
Yeah, Kimi at this track does tend to be pretty good. If you look at his history, when he's been in a top team, he's had plenty of podiums at this track. I think he's had at least 5 podiums at this track. He's very successful at this track. Of course, he won't be able to get a podium in the Alpha in Shanghai, but yeah, I think Kimi, if he can have a good weekend where there's hopefully this time no issues like there was in practice 2 in Bahrain, he should be able to get into the points if he can extract as much as he can from the Alpha. But now let's move on to Haas F1. Now, in Shanghai, I think they're going to be... I think they're going to have the best car in the midfield, but I don't think they're going to be way ahead or comfortably ahead, at the front of the midfield. I think they will definitely be in that top 10 for qualifying, probably in, 8th, 7th, 8th, that kind of area. But for the race, after what they did in Bahrain, I'm not confident at all that this team is actually going to be good in the Grand Prix and even maybe score points, because in Bahrain, they had no pace at all. They were probably the worst team in the midfield pace-wise in the Grand Prix. K-Mag fell back behind so many cars, the 2 Toro Rossos, Norris, Raikkonen, even Giovinazzi. And by the way, even Kvyat, when Kvyat had a 5-second penalty, and K-Mag in qualifying was, I think, at least half a second faster than Kvyat, if not closer to a second. So I don't know how they were so poor in Bahrain. I think it's to do with tyre wear, because we saw last year that they do not look after their tyres well, and they tend to be the worst team when it comes to looking after their tyres in the midfield. So I think it was to do with tyre wear, because tyre wear was very important in Bahrain. But the thing is, with a softer compound in Shanghai, at this type of track, it's going to be important here as well. And I think on race day, I think they're going to struggle. I really think they will. I think qualifying will go fine. They'll get a car into the top 10, at least one car, probably both. But in the race, Nib, I'm going to be honest, I'm not confident at all, because, again, tyre wear will be an issue at this Grand Prix, and I think they're going to struggle big time. Do you think they can maybe surprise us and be still at the front of the midfield, or do you think, again, they're going to really struggle with the tyres?
Yeah, it's weird. We've seen in qualifying that they were super quick. You know, Kevin Magnussen nearly out qualifying Max Verstappen at Bahrain. That we've seen in the race once again, they were just dead slow, and I really haven't seen too much into why they were slow in the race. Of course, Roman Grosjean had his race ruined by Lance Stroll on the first lap. I thought that was quite clearly Lance Stroll's fault. It was the gap that was never going to be there. It was always going to close. He didn't just need to stick his front wing and tyre there. So Grosjean got his race ruined there, but I don't think it would have really mattered, because, of course, with his penalty that he picked up for blocking Lando Norris in qualifying, that they would have had a good result. Because as we see in the race, they were absolutely awful. Kevin Magnussen was at some stage in P7 and ahead of Ricciardo, Raikkonen, and all of that, and then it just all of a sudden he was in P10. We actually didn't see what happened, and just kept on falling down the grid for the rest of the race. And it probably was tyre wear issues. We've seen last year, especially at tracks like Singapore, how awful their tyre wear was. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was tyre wear issues. And of course, at China, tyre wear is usually quite an issue for the team. So I'm not sure. I think Haas will still be quick, but in the race, I think that's a question that remains to be answered.
This is the thing, though, that you talk about with Bahrain. And I noticed this during the race watch along, where he went from P7 to P10. I think, if you look back, I don't think he went off the track or anything. I think he just had such poor pace that he fell back to that position. I think maybe the other teams were set up better for the Grand Prix. Maybe they look after the tyres better. I think teams like Renault and McLaren have always been better on their tyres than Haas, even though they've maybe not been as fast. But yeah, I think it was tyres. I don't think K-Mag, and to his credit, I don't think K-Mag actually made a mistake during the Grand Prix. I think he just had no pace whatsoever, and he was trying his best, but when your car is so bad on its tyres compared to other teams, I mean, we've seen with Mercedes in 2013, for example, and a couple races, what can you do when your tyres are going away from you so bad compared to other teams? You're a sitting duck. So hopefully it doesn't happen again in Shanghai, honestly, for the team. But I'm going to be honest, I think it will happen again. I think it will. I think qualifying, there'll be P8, P9, P7, around that area. But in the race, I'm not expecting a points finish from Haas at all. I'd actually be surprised if they got P7 or P8 in the Grand Prix. What were we going to say, Nib?
Yeah, just quickly. I think Magnussen did make a mistake because Sky were showing something else, or a replay of the start, I think, perhaps. And in the space of about half a lap, K-Mag was from in P7 and then dropped down to P10. I can just quickly check back through to the live timing, but I do think that K-Mag made a mistake somewhere, so I will just check.
It may, though, and we've seen this before, it may have just been someone overtaking him and then he gets pushed wide, another car goes past, and then, I mean, it's happened plenty of times. I think what's probably happened is he got passed into turn 1, went wide, got passed around the outside at probably turn 2, and then at turn 4 got mugged off probably again by another couple cars. I don't think he made an error, and if it was an error, it was probably a small one. I don't think it was a massive mistake, but definitely the car was in serious trouble in Bahrain, and I don't think, honestly, pace-wise, in the Grand Prix where it matters most, I don't think it is really going to improve. And it's quite sad, honestly, their pace in Bahrain, because it kind of feels like to me they've thrown away that good work from the first Grand Prix, being so quick, getting a great result with K-Mag and P6. It feels like they wasted that result of what they did in Bahrain, so kind of back to square one for Haas. Hopefully they do better than I think they're going to, but honestly I don't think they will. But now let's move on to Toro Rosso, who of course last year had a disastrous Chinese Grand Prix. Very slow. I think they had the second, I think, yeah, probably the ninth slowest car in the field. And of course, the two drivers, Pierre Gasly and Brendan Hartley at the time, made contact at the hairpin at the end of the back straight. It was a disastrous Grand Prix. And after Bahrain, even though they did get points of Albon, which is a great result, pace-wise, they weren't that great, and they were not deserving with Albon of a points finish. And I don't think, honestly, Toro Rosso, again, because of their not great aero and lack of power on that back straight or in the final sector in general, I just don't think Toro Rosso are really going to be in the fight for a points finish, for a serious points finish. I think at times they will be competing with, say, a Renault or a Alfa Romeo, or maybe a McLaren at times, but when it comes to the end result, I just don't see this team finishing in the top 10 in qualifying or getting a points finish. I don't see it at all. I don't think they have the speed right now, honestly, and Shanghai doesn't tend to be the greatest track for them. So I don't think Toro Rosso are really going to do anything that special in Shanghai. Nib, do you disagree? Do you think Toro Rosso can do something?
I don't think there really is much to disagree with what you've just said there. You know, just about bang average weekend last time out for Toro Rosso, and I don't think we'll see anything too much different. Of course, hopefully their drivers do not crash very comically, like they did last year at the hairpin. I don't know what on earth was going on there with Hartley and Gasly. I think Hartley was trying to let him through and then just ended up actually turning into the corner when Gasly was trying to go down the inside. So hopefully we don't have something silly like that happening between the drivers again this year. But good job by Albon to finish in the points. I thought he had a pretty good race. Truth be told, of course, he kind of lucked into the points with both Renaults retiring. But hey, that's Formula One. He got the points at the end of the day, and who knows? They were all right in the race. I think Kvyat, after he had his contact with Giovinazzi, well, that just ruined his race. And if we had seen a little bit more of Kvyat without that contact, I think it would have been a little bit more interesting. You know, they're certainly better off than what they were last year, but they're still not fantastic. They're still towards the bottom end of the midfield, and I think they'll have a decent weekend. But do I think they'll get points? Probably not. Probably not.
Yeah, I don't realistically see it. I just don't think they have the pace. I think teams like Renault, McLaren, Alfa even have probably a better car for this type of track than Toro Rosso. Yeah, Toro Rosso not looking that great, but is it really a surprise? Let's be honest. Moving on to Racing Point. Racing Point in Bahrain were, for me, not as good as I thought they would be. I thought Racing Point would be more so towards or on the outer edge of the points or outer edge of the top 10 in qualifying and then getting a strong points finish. But even though Perez did finish in the points, they didn't really have any real speed that weekend. And at Shanghai, kind of like Toro Rosso, I'm not expecting them to finish in the points because historically they don't go well here. And I don't think their car, if you look at it aerodynamically and where it isn't good and where it is good, it just won't go well at this track. I don't think they have enough grip in the corners. They'll have the straight line speed in the final sector over teams like Toro Rosso, McLaren, Renault, but I don't think they have the grip to really do anything at this Grand Prix, and I'm expecting them to be really stuck in that midfield, 12th to 17th. Maybe they can get a point if they get lucky, like Perez also did, along with Albon at the end of the Bahrain Grand Prix, but realistically, I just don't see how this team can get a point. I don't see it at all. Nib, for Racing Point, is there any real chance of points?
Probably not. I think they're in quite a similar boat to Toro Rosso. They're still learning about their car. Of course, it was brand new for Australia, and it was remarkable that they got into Q3 and got points at Albert Park. So, it was unusual to see that with Racing Point, but they usually have very slow starts to the season, and I think we're seeing it again here. Maybe, I don't think they'll be any worse than what they were in Bahrain. They were pretty slow and actually very disappointing for me. I think as we go through the season, they'll get stronger and stronger as they understand and develop their car even more. Who knows? Perez was actually having a solid race in the first stint of the Bahrain Grand Prix. So who knows? We could see a Racing Point in the points. But I don't think so. Very very similar to Toro Rosso. I think we might see those two battling quite a bit throughout the Chinese Grand Prix.
Yeah, I think those two teams will be pretty close. Also, though, the next track after Shanghai is, of course, Baku, and that is normally that team, or Racing Point, that's normally that team's best track on the calendar. So this race, I'm not expecting them to be that competitive, but when we get to Baku, I think they'll be right in the hunt for a strong points finish. But here, I just don't see it. I don't think that car is developed enough or has really the grip over 56 laps to really compete seriously for a points finish. But there you go. And then, of course, Williams are at the back. They're probably going to be worse here, I think, than Bahrain, because I think with there being more corners and this track being more aerodynamically efficient, I think that will hurt them more than Bahrain, because at least at Bahrain you have the straights that can hide certain issues. So I think here Williams will be worse, but is that really, honestly, a surprise? But before we go on to the Q&A at the end of this podcast, we are now going to do early predictions for the Chinese Grand Prix. Now we're going to do qualifying, a qualifying top 3 and a race top 3. So I'll start first with my qualifying and race prediction. In qualifying, I'm going Charles Leclerc on pole position and Sebastian Vettel in second place in a Ferrari 1-2. I think Ferrari will have the speed, especially in the final sector, to take pole and the front row. And they, I think, will definitely have the best car. Lewis Hamilton will then line up in third in qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix of 2019. But in the Grand Prix, honestly, it's tough to predict because I think the start is very, kind of like Bahrain, the start is crucial to the end result. If a Mercedes gets into second at the end of the first lap at least, they could end up winning the Grand Prix because, as we saw in Bahrain, with them being able to be more aggressive and push Ferrari into making more stops than probably they wanted to, or to doing things they didn't want to do, they were able to force errors out the drivers or driver, and make their way up the field that way. So I think the start is very crucial to who wins the Grand Prix. But I'm going to go for Charles Leclerc to win the Chinese Grand Prix, Lewis Hamilton to finish in second, and Sebastian Vettel to finish in third. And then I think Bottas will finish in fourth, and then Verstappen will probably finish in fifth, not too far behind Valtteri Bottas for P4. Nib, for qualifying and the Grand Prix, what do you think right now, based on what we've seen in the first two races, going into Shanghai, what do you think in qualifying and the Grand Prix is going to happen?
I must say, thanks for not coming to me on Williams, because I was literally just going to say, move on or something like that. So thanks for that. Saved us a little bit of time there. But getting pole position for the second race in the row, I believe it will be Charles Leclerc. I think we've seen just how quick this guy is, this kid is. In the last qualifying session, of course, I call him a kid, and he is older than me. So Charles. I think he'll take pole. In second, I think will be Sebastian Vettel. Third will be Lewis Hamilton. Pretty bog standard answer there. But in the race, I think it will be Charles Leclerc to clinch his first victory, getting that back from Bahrain, where he should have won, of course. In second, though, I think it will be Lewis Hamilton. I think the Ferrari car will be quicker, but Hamilton, just being as good as he is, I think he will get second place. And then in third place, I'm gonna go with Sebastian Vettel. I don't think he'll absolutely have a horror show like he did in Bahrain, but I still think Hamilton will beat him. So those will be my top threes for the quali and race in China. I will be able to join the race watch along on the Sunday this time. So I'm certainly looking forward to that, and I'm going to be very excited for the Grand Prix ahead next weekend.
Yeah, I'm absolutely already pumped for next weekend's race. By the way, when it comes to qualifying the Grand Prix and what I think will happen, these predictions are open to be altered based on new information, such as maybe Ferrari won't be as quick, or maybe Mercedes aren't as quick as we think, or maybe they aren't as quick as we think they are based on practice or anything like that. So we may alter these based on what actually does happen in practice and qualifying, but right now I think realistically that's a good enough prediction. I don't think many people is going to disagree with that. In the live chat right now, I'll read out some early predictions from some of you guys. So by the way, hello to JB in the chat. NN says Leclerc to win from Vettel second, Bottas third. Jay Crail says Hamilton first, Vettel second, Bottas third, Leclerc fourth. Pedro Goldfinger, Ferrari 1-2 with Vettel winning ahead of Leclerc, then Bottas third. NN, that was his qualifying prediction for Leclerc on pole. Okay, and then Vettel second and Bottas third. And then in the race, he goes Vettel to win, Hamilton second, Leclerc third, Bottas fourth, and Verstappen in fifth. And Sebastian goes Leclerc to win from Vettel second and Hamilton in third. Also, make sure to put whether that is qualifying or the Grand Prix, so I can tell the difference. But we are now going to move on to the Q&A. Now, guys, go ahead for the next 20 minutes and ask as many questions as you can. I'll try to pick out the best ones I can find in the next 20 minutes or so. As you make sure in the chat to ask that right now. And also, if you're watching this after this stream has finished, make sure to post a question in the comments section, and I'll try and answer some in there as well. But again, don't forget to subscribe for more podcast episodes and also the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix content that is coming up next weekend. Don't forget to subscribe, bottom right of the screen. You can do it right there. or click on my channel name, go to the home channel page and subscribe, and also hit the notifications bell for more content like this. But before I get into reading out some questions, I just want to let you guys know of an update to the content schedule for the Chinese Grand Prix weekend. So, of course, you guys will know that when I do a race watch along on race day, you know, I do the race watch along, hour build up, and then, you know, go right through the race, and then I do an hour reaction with you guys to what has happened. But there is now going to be a difference for Shanghai. So the race watch along will still happen, hour build up, hour and a half normally is how long the race takes to, you know, finish. So I'll be live through that. But instead of being live for about an hour after the race is finished, I'll be live for about half an hour after the race is finished, because to try and, I think, boost the views, honestly, on the race reviews, what I'm going to do, instead of having the race review on a Monday night, I'm going to move the Chinese Grand Prix race review to around Sunday lunchtime in the UK, so about 3 to 4 hours after the race has finished. So that is what is going to be going down. And then the incident analysis video will... The incident analysis will no longer be a part of the race reviews. What is now going to happen with that is I will now upload that separately from the race review. So if there is incidents to analyze, whether that's overtakes, crashes, you know, stuff like that, then I will analyze that and upload a video analysing incidents from the race in Shanghai on the Monday at 4 PM. But the race review for Shanghai will be around lunchtime in the UK, about 3 to 4 hours after the race finishes. So it'll be a lot earlier for you guys. And yeah, I think probably it is going to work in terms of boosting, you know, interest and also viewership for the race review. So make sure you remember that, and I'll make sure to remind you guys during the race watch along anyway that the race review will be 3 to 4 hours after the race is finished. So yeah, make sure to come along to that Sunday lunchtime race review for the Chinese Grand Prix, and then the incident analysis. If there is incidents to analyze, then I will be doing it Monday 4 PM in a recorded video. But now I'll move on to the live chat and look at your questions and see what you guys have to say, and see what you have for us.
And Andrew Judy has #1 comment.
What? Why have you said that? I don't understand.
He's put communism will win, and of course, going to China, you know, I think it might.
Oh my god. Anyway, right, let me find the first one so we can start this off. Yeah, we'll do Q&A for about 20 minutes, and then we'll go on to the end of the stream. Ultraman asks, who is going to replace Paddy Lowe as technical director? I guess Patrick Head has kind of already done that, so there's your answer. Sebastian, do you think it's critical Ferrari get a win in China and Baku? Yes. They have to win in China. They have to also win in Baku, but they've got to win the race next weekend. No doubt about it. They've got to win. There is absolutely no excuses for me. If they don't win, it's a disastrous result, considering that they really should be seriously competing for the championship in both the drivers and the constructors. Lisa Dubs, do you think the Ferrari guys are lying about the problem which affected Leclerc because they keep on changing the story? Are they trying to hide something? No, I don't think they are. I think what they're doing is, you know, looking at the power unit and finding out more stuff about what happened that caused the issue. I don't think they're lying at all. I think they're just finding out for themselves more information about how his power unit went down to only 5 cylinders. I think that's what's happened. Astuto Investments, what do you think is the reason for the difference in Ferrari's competitiveness between the first two races? First Grand Prix, they had setup issues, but also they had to turn the power unit down, I think, because of cooling issues. But I think Australia doesn't really massively suit the Ferrari anyway. Bahrain has always been a great track for Ferrari. It always has. They've always tended, over the history of the Bahrain Grand Prix, most times to have either one of the best cars or the best car. So I think Bahrain is just one of those circuits where Ferrari always tend to do well. Every team has them. I mean, look at Mercedes at Russia, or Mercedes right now at Suzuka. It's just one of those tracks where they always turn up and have great speed and do very, very well. And Corolla asks, do you think the Ferrari engine is reliable? I think even though they had that issue, I don't think it's unreliable. I mean, it's one thing. One issue, one reliability issue does not mean you're an unreliable team or you have an unreliable car. So I don't think it is unreliable. Last season, Ferrari had bulletproof reliability, especially for their works teams. And yeah, do you want to offer anything on that, Niv? Because honestly, I don't think Ferrari have, since the issues at the end of 2017 with the spark plug and things like that, Ferrari haven't really tended to have reliability issues, have they?
Yeah, we've seen last year how strong the Ferrari engine was reliable. It was the most reliable engine throughout the whole of last year, actually. And they had a little issues with cooling. In Melbourne, that was just because of the way they set up the car. And then in Bahrain, it was just a little short circuit, and Christ, that can happen with the PowerPoint in your house. Sometimes it just happens, and it did in Bahrain, and I don't think it actually shows the true picture of Ferrari's reliability. I think they have a very reliable engine.
Yeah,
and before they blow up this weekend.
Yeah, let's not jinx it, because you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have fine reliability. Last year it was quite incredible how reliable it was. I mean, all teams will have reliability issues during a season, but last year Ferrari were very, very good when it came to that area. And I don't think Sebastian Vettel, for example, had a single reliability issue that affected any of his results. So there you go. Ultraman asks, is Renault reliable? Absolutely not. And I have to say, it's very disappointing that, 5 years into the V6 turbo era, they still have not got reliability sorted. Even Honda, after the disaster that they were, they have really, Honda got reliability nailed down. They haven't had, I can't remember one issue Honda have had in 2019 so far. But if you look at Renault, they're still having plenty of issues. As you said, Nib, earlier, electrical issues in qualifying in Bahrain, the double retirement for Renault in the Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz's retirement for McLaren. I just can't believe they still cannot get this thing sorted when Honda, when they had unbelievably bad reliability only 2 years ago, now in 2019, after all the testing and the first 2 races, they haven't had one issue. I can't believe Renault still cannot get reliability right. And hopefully, eventually, sometime in the future, they can have reliability, but I don't think they really ever will. Mr. Random Guy asks, will DRS be too OP on the back straight? Only if they move the DRS line back you know, towards the corner before and move it sooner, then it will be OP. And hopefully they don't. I don't think they need to. I think the straight, you know, it's such a long straight, and also the DRS where it is, I think makes it a good enough point to activate the DRS. And you even without DRS, you tend to get a great slipstream anyway down the back straight. So, yeah, hopefully they don't move it back closer to the corner before, because if they did, then I think it would become ridiculously OP, especially if you're in a Ferrari powered car, going up against maybe a Renault powered car. Carola, do you think Red Bull have made the right decision going with Honda? We can't really say right now. I think the Red Bull Honda partnership will come to fruition later on in the season. I don't think what you're seeing now is what they absolutely are for 2019. We need to give it loads more races before we make an analysis like that. But I think it will work, but you just need to give it time. I think it will work, though. I don't think... If Red Bull stayed with Renault, and I think you said this, didn't you, Nib? If Red Bull were with Renault, they wouldn't have got a podium in Melbourne. So, yeah. I don't think they made a mistake, but I don't think we can say whether it's been the right or wrong decision yet, because we haven't had enough races.
Well,
no, go ahead.
Well, I think it's been 2 races already, and we've seen 3 Renaults pull over. It's 3 Renault power engined whatever cars, English great, cars retire from the race already. So I think reliability wise and performance wise, I don't think there's much separating the Honda and the Renault engine now, performance wise, but reliability, I think it's a no contest so far this season. 3 retirements for Renault-powered cars, 0 for Hondas.
Yeah, there you go. Andrew Drury says, and I think we can kind of comment on this. He says, people think I'm weird when I say that I like the Shanghai circuit. I don't understand why people... There's some people out there that really don't like this track. I don't get it. It's always produced a great race, or good racing. I don't understand why people don't like it. It's been a very good track. We've had plenty of classic moments, overtakes, crashes, all of that stuff. I don't get why some people really don't like this track. It's always been a good track, and I think it will produce a good Grand Prix next weekend. I will say, though, I don't think it will be as good as the Bahrain Grand Prix, because the first 2 sectors, it is a bit hard to follow at times. And it's a bit harder to overtake at Shanghai than it is at Bahrain. But I think we'll get a better race at Shanghai than we did in Melbourne, even though Melbourne was pretty good for a first race of the season. So yeah, I don't understand why people think that track is that bad.
I do want to touch just quickly on that. Bahrain and China usually have the most overtakes for all of the races throughout the season. So I think the Chinese Grand Prix will be another good one. And China is a fantastic circuit. It's my favorite track to drive, and if not my favorite track on their calendar, behind Albert Park, of course, because that is the best track in the world. But yeah, Shanghai is very good.
Yeah, I've always liked Shanghai. I don't know why people, sometimes rag on it. It's always been a good track, and I don't think there's ever been a really boring race at Shanghai. I don't think there's ever been like a race you can really pick out and say this one was really bad. I don't think there ever really has been one. So we're not going to get a bad race at Shanghai. It's going to be at least good, possibly great, depending mostly on the weather conditions, I think. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Sebastian asks, if Ferrari don't win in China, will the championship be gone, since you know Mercedes are so good in the second half of the season? It won't be gone, but it does make the rest of 2019 pretty difficult, because then a pattern will start to emerge showing that Ferrari just cannot get the job done on a Sunday, which is something that we saw in 2018. So hopefully they can get it done in Shanghai. But look, their championship bid won't be over, but it will definitely make Mercedes the favourites, I think, going forward after Shanghai in both the constructors and the drivers. Because if Lewis Hamilton wins in Shanghai, both drivers are probably going to be over a race win behind the leader of the World Championship, and they're going to be miles off in the constructors already in this early part of the season. So, as we said earlier, Ferrari, all they need to do is go out and win. Doesn't need to be a 1-2, just go out there, get the win, and then really, strike back against the Silver Arrows. Baku, of course, is after Shanghai, and Baku will definitely suit Ferrari. The final sector, Ferrari will be so much quicker than anything else, and the first sector, they'll be probably very quick there as well. So Ferrari are going to be looking good pace-wise for the next couple of races. They just need to start getting the results in the Grand Prix. Right, let me find some more questions here if I can. Sebastian also says, is it just me, or does every time Ferrari get a front row lockout, the race is super exciting? And when Mercedes get a front row lockout, the race is not that good. That's because Ferrari don't have what it really takes compared to Mercedes to get the result that they had in qualifying. Whenever Mercedes get a front row, they tend to get the same result in the Grand Prix. Ferrari, they just don't yet have really what it takes to get the result that they get in qualifying. Kind of similar-ish to Haas. Haas and Ferrari are very similar. They always are at their best in qualifying, but in the Grand Prix, they can get the best result they can sometimes, but sometimes they just really fail to get the result that they should. And also, I'd like to point out, if you watched my race watch along, in the build-up, I was talking about how, Ferrari, what they need to do for the Grand Prix, because it was their first front row lockout since Monza in 2018. And that race, of course, for Ferrari was a disaster. And what happened with Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton at Monza pretty much happened exactly the same in Bahrain. Hamilton went round the outside of Vettel, the only difference being Vettel did not make contact. But they pretty much, with the Vettel-Hamilton stuff, it was exactly the same thing. The only difference being that Ferrari at Monza lost because of tyre wear issues. Ferrari lost in Bahrain because of Leclerc's power unit problem. But it was a similar kind of race in terms of how it unfolded. It was looking great with one of their cars after, Vettel made a mistake with Lewis Hamilton, but then it just all fell away. So, again, after a front row lockout for this team, they just failed to get it done. So, yeah, hopefully if they do get a front row in Shanghai, they do better than they did last year in Shanghai, where they got a front row, half a second clear of everyone else, or the nearest team, and they finished P3 and P8. I know Vettel got took out and, had damage to his car, but still, the result was quite poor considering what it should have been for that Grand Prix. Good morning to Tonka Toy Truck, who says, "So I'm late, no problem." We just had someone in the comments, I think Say Rugara, saying Hakkinen maybe better than Vettel. I will say, for me, Vettel is now in that, say, Mansell, PK, Hakkinen, Raikkonen type of area of the all-time list. Drivers that were very good, or at least good, but never really, or on a consistent basis, were never great. Yeah, there you go. Let me see if I can find any more. I'm probably going to end the Q&A in a moment because we have been on for almost 2 hours now, so probably be ending in a moment. John Huebner says, championship decided, Mercedes manufacturer / driver. Yes, it's a long season, but Merc, don't blow it. If I was you, I'd wait before I before I make that prediction, because you never know. I mean, Mercedes eventually will not, or will lose the championship. They're not going to win forever. They're absolutely not going to win forever. But yeah, at the moment, it's looking great for that team. At the moment. Hello to Dexter Hall, who says, what did I miss? Well, we've recapped the Bahrain Grand Prix with Nib, and we've just done a full preview for the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. So because you missed it, you're better probably waiting until the stream is finished, and then when the stream gets processed, going back and watching and listening to what we had to say. Mr. Random Guy, are you looking forward to the early wake-up times? No, I'm not, honestly, but luckily for us, in the UK and Europe, this is the final early Grand Prix until Suzuka, which is early October, I think it is. So that's great. What time does the race take place at your time, Nib? Is it like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon?
It's 4 p.m. for practice 2, quali, and the race. And if you're complaining about 7 a.m. being an early wake-up time, oh please, come on. Think of the Australians here who have to stay up late for the Grand Prix, who have to stay up late for the football, you know, and for some people who have to wake up at 5:30 or 4:30 to watch the Champions League or to commentate on league races. Think of those people.
Oh, I know, but you know, if people in the UK were used to it, if IndyCar was bigger than F1, then I think people in Europe and the UK would be used to it. But yeah, it's because we only get, what, 2 or 3 early or middle of the night races a season, and you get, what, 14, 15 races like that, I think. So yeah, there you go. Right, let me find a final question, and then I'll come to the end of the stream here. Also, another thing, with the Australian Grand Prix, it's actually, even though it's very early in the morning for us in the UK, it's better than it was, because it used to be, the Australian Grand Prix used to take place earlier in the day, and it used to be at like 2 a.m, like the start of the Grand Prix, so it used to be a lot worse. Let's not complain too much. It used to be like 2, 3 a.m. Yeah, because it was
much better.
It was bad for the European audience, basically, taking place at 2 or 3 a.m. So it used to be a lot worse. I don't think we should really complain, to be honest. Right, I'll find a final question here. And the final one is from NN. If Ferrari are generally better on the straights and Mercedes in the corners, over the balance of the season, who does that favour? If that is the case, then I'd say Ferrari, pace-wise, because the V6 turbo era, even though we've had, you know, the 2017 aerodynamic regulations and then the 2019 ones, Formula One is still an engine formula. You have to have the power if you want to win the World Championship. If you don't have the power, you're not going to win. That's why Red Bull have not contended for a World Championship at all in the V6 turbo era, because they've never had the power to do so. So, for me, power is more important in this current era of Formula One than aerodynamic grip and the chassis. It's very important, you know, the chassis and the aerodynamic grip, but power is definitely, I think, more important, because I think in this current formula, the way Formula One is right now, you can gain more time in having extra power than you can having the grip. More so, a lot more so than, say, the V8 days, where it was basically all about who had the best aerodynamics and chassis, more so than who had the most power. But there you go, that is the end of the 34th episode of the podcast. Thank you guys for coming along and being a part of it. The viewership of this was pretty good. We had about 110, 115 people watching at one point, so thank you guys for coming along, watching, being part of the stream, asking your questions and posting your comments. And also, thanks to Nib for coming along, and again, as he said earlier, he will be a part of the race watch along for the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix. So, yeah, looking forward to that, and I assume you're looking forward to it as well a lot, mate.
I sure am, and who knows, I might be part of the practice and qualifying watch-alongs. I can be a part of them. But yeah, thanks for having me on. It's been a very good podcast as usual. We've gone for nearly 2 hours. We like to go for quite some time. But just quickly, you've got a super chat donation there, so I think you might want to read that out before we finish.
Oh yes, I have. Thank you for doing so. It's from Bobby Pinard. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. But he's donated $1.99. And he asks, will Gasly get dropped if he doesn't perform? Yes, he will, but it'll only be if it becomes consistent. If he continues what he did in Bahrain, for Shanghai, Baku and Spain, and even Monaco, where they're expected to be good, then he will be dropped. There's no doubt about it. Helmut Marko is not going to wait all season for Pierre Gasly to get his act together. So, yeah, he will be dropped if he keeps up what he did in Bahrain. But I don't think he will get dropped, honestly. I think he will improve. But again, if he keeps up what he did in Bahrain, then I don't see how he can possibly not be dropped for either one of the Toro Rosso drivers, honestly. But thank you for that donation. By the way, guys, you can, of course, if you want to, donate. If you look at the live chat, this is for future streams. If you see the $ next to the emoji face sign there, the $, that is where you can donate and, of course, help out the channel. And also, just to let you guys know, I'm probably going to promote it, or start promoting it next week. But I have started the process of setting up a Patreon. So that might come to fruition and might be a thing, say, next week. So if you want to also donate to that, then I'll let you know the details later on, once I properly set it up and start promoting it. But Nib, yeah, thanks for coming on and previewing next week's race. And yeah, I think we're in for another great race, don't you think?
Indeed, we are. So, yep, once again, thanks for tuning in, guys, and always being very, very active in the comments section. It really is great to see. And I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope you have a good time until you hear me next. Take care.
Yep, thanks for coming on, as usual, Nib. But before I, get into the outro, I just want to let you guys know of the schedule coming up on the channel before we get to the Chinese Grand Prix weekend. So the next video is going to be on Monday night at 7 PM, where I'm going to be live for This Week in Formula One, which is my news show. The reason I'm delaying it till Monday is because I'm waiting as long as I can, so as much news can build up so I can actually do a news show. So that's what I'm doing. And that's why I'm going to wait until Monday night. And that will be the next video or stream on the channel. Monday night, 7 PM UK time. This week in Formula One. And I do already have a couple topics eyed up. I'm not going to say yet what they are, but I got an idea of what we're going to be talking about on Monday night, and it might provoke a bit of a debate. So yeah, we'll see what happens on Monday night. Then on Tuesday, I will be uploading on Tuesday at 4 p.m. UK time a video about Formula 1 in 2021, because we've basically had enough details to reveal what we're going to have for the 2021 regulations for Formula 1. So that video talking about that, analysing it, showing what is going to be coming for that season will be coming out on Tuesday at 4 p.m. I'm in the process currently of editing it and getting it finished. So that will be out on Tuesday, and then at Thursday at 4 p.m. I will be uploading a race that is celebrating the 1000th race in Formula 1 history and looking at the top 10 greatest races in history. And what I'm probably going to do is talk about the greatest races in history and count down my top 10, and then open up a poll to you guys, and then you guys can vote on what you think the best race of all time is. So that's what I'm probably going to do. That video will be on Thursday at 4 p.m. Then practice watch along for practice 2 around 7 a.m. UK time on Friday morning. And of course Saturday, qualifying watch along and qualifying review. Sunday, race watch along, and then the race review about 3 to 4 hours after the race finishes, and then the incident analysis will be Monday at 4 p.m. So that is the content coming up between now and the day after the next race in Shanghai. So there you go. That is it for this stream. Thank you guys for coming along and being a part of this podcast. As Nib said a minute ago, don't forget to subscribe for more of these episodes of the podcast. You can either do that at the bottom right of the screen, or go to my homepage by clicking on my channel name and clicking subscribe, and hit the notifications bell. By the way, if you want the best place for notifications for my videos and streams, join the Discord server, link below in the description to that Discord. You can join the server. Again, be a part of that server, which is the best place for notifications of my videos, and also that is the hardcore part of the ChazzaHDF1 community, and we are quite interactive, I think that's safe to say, in that server. Also, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110. That's a great place to keep up to date with me and the channel, and check out my website ChazzaHD.com for more content like this. Like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what do you think will happen at the 2019 Chinese Grand Prix in Shanghai. Let me know in the comments, and I'll try to reply to as many comments as I can. But guys, until Monday night for this week in Formula 1, and until the next race and the start of that weekend next Friday at about 6:30 or 7 a.m. UK time, it has been me, ChazzaHD. Goodbye.